Now, with a reality check on plane safety after that series of recent crashes have raised concerns about flying. Have you seen this? Google searches for "Is it safe to fly?" spiking since the incidents. Gio joins us again along with ABC contributor and aviation expert Steve Ganyard. And Gio, let me start with you because that plane that crashed in Toronto was a CRJ 900. A regional jet, as you know, and many people are asking, these smaller passenger planes, do they have more difficulty in rough weather?
So, Robin, some experts believe that a CRJ, because it's a lighter plane, that it's a little more difficult to maneuver in windy conditions. Now, I got to tell you, I flew in on a regional jet, and I can tell you, I felt the wind, and I went up to the pilot after, and I said, boy, that must have been a really rough landing for you. And he says, oh, no, I do this all the time. So it really is all relative because they do have exceptional training, Robin.
And as Robin said, smaller plane with less fuel. The crash happened upon landing instead of takeoff. How did those factors play a role in the outcome to this?
So in theory, right, when you're starting the flight, you have a lot more fuel on a plane than when you're ending the flight. So in theory, when you would think about it, there's a bigger risk there of a fire happening or a more dangerous fire. But I got to tell you that by the time this plane landed, it still had a lot of fuel on board because obviously it has to take into account if it has to circle the airport and fly around or even divert. So there was still plenty of fuel on board. There's a lot of different factors here. So anytime there's an accident with any fuel, it's very dangerous.
And Steve, what do we expect to learn from the black boxes?
Yeah, George, something went wrong in the last 10 seconds of this flight. We have data that shows that a 1,000 feet per minute descent rate had built up just prior to touchdown. That's about almost twice as what it should have been just prior to touching down. So they're going to want to look at why did the airplane develop this high rate of sink, because as you see in this amazing video, that hard hit on the right landing gear caused the right landing gear to fail, created that fire, and began the roll of the airplane as it went down the runway.
And Steve, we've been talking to you, and you know that there has been a lot of concern about flying. In fact, that Google search spiking, people asking, is it safe to fly? But still, you insist, and others, and that's saying that still that it is one of the safest modes of transportation. How can you continue to let people know that?
To say that, yeah. I know, Robin. This and people get nervous. You know, we talked about this yesterday. I've got family members who are nervous flyers. Nobody likes to see this, but statistically, sometimes these things happen in groups. And I think that if we go back and we think of the statistics, per mile, flying is 2,000 times safer than driving in your car. You would have to fly over every day for 100,000 years to be in a fatal mishap. So statistically, I'm not guaranteeing it, but statistically, we should be in for a long, long period before we ever have to talk about another mishap in aviation.
Well, we sure hope that is the case there, Steve. And Gio, we know a child was injured. We don't quite know the circumstances yet. But what should people consider, and what do they need to know if they're going to travel with young children?
Well, you know, this is the thing, Michael, because, you know, children under 2 fly for free on the lap, right? And so a lot of parents, they like that. They like to be able to hold their child on the lap. But it's just terrifying to think about. If you think about this crash and what happened, I don't care how strong you are, you would not be able to hold your child in a crash like this. And so it's awful to think of what could have happened to a lap child in this case. But that's something that safety advocates have been pushing for and saying, no, children need, at all ages, their separate seat. Now, there are FAA-approved car seats that you can bring on a plane. The problem is that costs money, right? Because you have to pay for the seat, but you might be able to ask the airline if there's an empty seat next to you.
All right, Gio, thank you for that. Some great advice. Colonel Steve Ganyard, thank you as well.